can you do it for me if it's not working? The next slide, please. Unless there's a particular. Next slide. Good. Um, I would bring my laptop because with this angle. Yes, sir. After the presentation. Thank you so much for your patience. Um, so with the MRH, which is the West African MRH process, which is anchored to the AMRH, which is the Continental Regulatory Initiative under AUDA NEPAD, which since 2009 has been established by African Union and had been able to coordinate almost all the regional institutions, on the continent. So you see my colleagues here who will be presenting on the various regions that they come from. So we actually, under the program, has 4 quadrants, which is the steering committee, the secretariat, the NMR, which are the regulators at country level, which we coordinate, and then expert working groups that do the scientific reviews. So I will talk about the steering committee. What do? They provide the policy guidelines, the project implementation oversight, they endorse the project-related documents and also recommendations for approval. And we've been able to do successfully about 25 joint assessments, with 13 applications having been completed and approved. We have 1 rejected and 1 withdrawal, and then 9 are on hold, and then there's 1 that is all actually ongoing. Actually, recently, that 1 was just approved about a week, recommended for approval just a week ago. And then we've also have about 6 GMP, which is good manufacturing pass inspections. And this have been approved by the steering committee. The secretariat is West Africa Health Organization, which is under ECOWAS. And we do it in a joint with the French group within the ECOWAS, the 15 countries. We have 8 countries that are French countries, and they have a monitoring association called the Yeboah. So together we form the secretariat, and we are responsible for implementation of the project and then the project coordination and management with other implementation partners like the WHO and Swiss Medics and the IMA and the rest. So, and of course, other supporting agents and then NEPAD NEPAD as well. We come to quadrant 3, which is the 15 NMRs. The steering committee is made up of all the heads of the NMRs within the region. So they take the decisions and they actually coordinate and guide the processes. So whatever happens within the procedure, they're much involved and they disseminate information to their NMRs in the various countries. So here, the activity implementations, they are more actually responsible. The countries are all responsible and they have that respective countries, organizations, making it more effective. And then also we use common regulatory processes. The guidelines and process that has been developed at the regional level disseminates to countries, and all of us use the same documents so that there will be uniformity in what we do. We have had lots of the NMRs developing themselves to ISO 9001. And then also we have the 2 maturity level 3, which Ghana, Nigeria, and there's Senegal that is upcoming very soon. They've been assessed, they've done a good job, and with the nearest future, I think that they will be also be maturity level 3. The other countries are in different levels of the maturity level. Some are in 2 with different functions, others are still in 1, depending on what you're doing, so the functions differ. And then also we have ordinary or other improved business processes that are going on in engagements. There's also quality work that actually moving through where we have the quality management systems. It's for this that they've been able to develop their systems. And then of course that had also led to the maturity level, the GBT levels that are needed. We've trained a lot of the regulators in terms of the regulatory system strengthening under the various functions. We've also trained the laboratories in the system, in the laboratories for the regulators and those that are outside the regulators in the region, to be able to build capacity for the region and to build that expertise. So when we come to the quadrant 4, which is we have 10 expert working groups, and each of the working groups has 7 members and 2 technical advisors from previous memberships, so making them 9. And then we have the registration, the GMP inspection, we have the quality management system, we have the information management system, pharmacovigilance, clinical trial, the policy, we have medical devices group, and then of course we have the quality control group, and many making up 10. And each of them have already done the development of their guidelines specific to working with other partners, and also looking into what the WHO, AVREV, and the other international organizations are doing to align whatever documents they're developing. And that also helps in the process of registration. The timelines at country levels before the NMRH process started would range between 2 to 3 years, depending on which country, depends on the strength and capacity of the individual countries. But now we have moved all the way down to about 5 to 7 months, where the rate of registration is faster. So that will, of course, also impact on access, fast means of access. And then we also work with take into consideration the WHO PQ and also the WLAs, as well as the other processes that are going on elsewhere in terms of our sister regs. And then we currently, to improve on our documentation, which we previously were using the document CTD, which is a common technical document, as that has 5 models for which we look at in the registration process. We're moving towards the ECTD, which is an electronic version, to accelerate processes and also create more transparency and assurance. I was on this, yeah. Please, until I ask you to move, please don't move, because you move beyond my slide. Oh, this was all that I was talking. Now I'm here. Thank you. So this is an infographic of the whole process I spoke about. This infographic tells us when we received an expression of interest. We have all year round acceptance of applications. There's no time barrier. So 24/7, 365 days, when you send it to the Dropbox, we have it. What we have done is that we have what a country that has been nominated as a lead coordinating NMRA. First, it was FDA. They did it for 2 years. Now it's in NAFDAC. So NAFDAC nominates somebody who's responsible for the whole process, and NAFDAC, and the applicant sends notify the person, and then whilst copying the secretary, which is WAHO, and then they receive the applications, screen it. There's a process of screen. They will screen it within a maximum of 30 days. They should have finished screening it, and then they will send a letter of eligibility to the applicant whether they have rejected the screening process or accepted, and then they would inform WAHO as well that that product screening has been accepted. Then the evaluation process will now start. So then that also has a period of time which you look into. I don't have a pointer. I would have taken you through it because I don't think it works. Okay, fine, lovely. So when we look at this, we have the pre-submission, we have the submission, they have a pre-submission meeting where the applicant would discuss with the lead coordinator, who's in NAFDAC now, as to what the expectations are and how we should fill the ECTD present for the dossier presentation. And then when all that has been concluded, then we're looking at the submission itself for validation. And then this area will tell us, which is the screening, and then they will tell us as to whether they have rejected the screening of the product because it's not complete dossier, the products are not quality enough. And if they're quality enough, they accept it. And then they inform the secretariat, which is the point 4, and then means the process starts. And then we move on to process 1. And then we look at the evaluation. We call the expert working groups to now come in to look at the first time. But before we call them, we would have given the dossier to one country member of the expert working group who would generate the assessment report. So when they have done that, then we will look at it and then call the whole members of the group, which is the evaluation group, to look at that cycle of work. When they are okay and there's suppose they generated some questions, or there is a need to do a GMP assessment, or there's a need to do quality control assessment on that product, then there's the clock, the whole process closes. There's a clock closure here, and then we give time, maybe maximum of 3 months. It could be a month to 3 months, depends on the weight of the questionnaires or the questions or queries that were sent to the applicants. And then when the applicants respond, then we'll have to call them again to meet in the review. If they're satisfied, then within less than maybe 66 days or 80 days, you're getting your approval. But if it's not, it means you have to regenerate another set of questions for you to answer them. And then we always try to go 2 cycles of the questioning. But if you go to the third cycle, it means you're prolonging the process. So we have a process of the normal range is 136 to 196 days. But if your product has been previously approved by WHO PQ, IMA, or any stringent regulatory agency, the WLA, then your time becomes very short. But then you have to submit full dossier of all the responses and queries and everything that the stringent regulatory agency or the PQ has analyzed. Then within 60 days, you're sure to get your products accepted for approval. So this is it. And you pay $500 for screening. And then if you're within the applicant from the West African region, you pay $8,000. This $8,000, this content is for both registration, for GMP if it's needed to visit your site, and then also for QC assessment. Yeah, the 8,000 is not enough. So how is it enough? No, it's not enough. But we have other subsidies. I mean, support from other partners, so we make up to that to cushion the applicant for now. So that is where we go for 8,000 for the region. Those in the continent, 10,000. Those beyond the continent, 12,000. So this is an infographic of the general approach that we go in. Please, next slide. Yeah, thank you. Now, having done these processes and having had some products approved, the question is what next? Because the applicants will have to go to the countries for approval, which you get in market authorization. And because it's been done on the regional platform, they don't go through the registration process anymore. Maybe a week, two, maximum 60 days, they should have approved or given market authorization to the applicant at that level. So we realize that we need to actually create a market access, create opportunities for the applicants to make sure that their products reaches the patient or the user. So we created what we call the linking regulatory to procurement and local manufacturing, where these 2 or 3 groupings are brought together to see how best the products that are either produced locally or the products that are in the system within the supply chain can be assessed by the patient. And looking at that, we didn't leave it alone. We also developed what we call the quality assurance policy framework, which helps or guides both the region and nationals on the product selection processes, so that we'll look at stringently, even at the procurement level, making sure that they're going by the regulation to prevent the substandard and falsified products circulating in the system. And then during the COVID, the head of states in 2001, 2021 January, asked ECOWAS Commission and WAHO to create a pool procurement mechanism and a revolving fund that will also attract or mop up most of the products that have been registered and those in the system, and then also be able to procure them for the patient. And this goes for both therapeutics, it goes for vaccines and other medical products. Now we also for vigilance and then also for acceleration of the processes in the region, like I mentioned earlier, the ECTD format was developed, which was launched in February 2024 this year. And then we have the regional platform and all the 15 countries all on the same platform. And we've gotten 8 countries that have received the electronic versions, and that all the crystal is aligned well, as well as the region. And then they've gone alive, and then they're working on it. So now they will receive dossiers not on paper and not just through Dropbox or just a link, but directly into the system which has been developed. And we also have for exchange of information, we have the web portal that has been developed, and then also to strengthen the whole processes of the harmonization since 2008, and then starting concretely in 2016 17 in ECOWAS has actually created a stronger collaboration or ties, improved networking, trust and transparency between the NMRAs, and then also created an enhanced, an objective, enhanced reliance, because through the training and mentoring processes that we have been engaging. Please, next slide. So if you look at the benefits that the JAP, which is the joint assessment process, have actually brought the NMI to regional NMI process into being, it's that it has created a larger market, 15 ECOWAS member states, not necessarily with a population of over 405 million people. So for an applicant, it's an opportunity, not only registering his own country within that population group that he is, but then finding a whole bigger group of people that who can access. It has also reduced registration time, like I said, between depending on which product and where the person is coming from and all the documentation that has been provided, from 2 to 3 years to 5 to 9 months maximum, depending on how the responses are. The quality assurance aspects and safety of the medical products is also of high level. And then there's transparency in the process that has brought strong collaboration and coordination and reliance. And then also the recognition by all the 15 member states, including WHO, the other regs, IODA, NEPAD, international partners, Global Fund, UNICEF, and PATH, and others, are also recognizing the process and taking products that have been approved on that platform and buying them for member states within the region. Next slide, please. Good. So, having talked about all companies, I'm going to now narrow to, because we're doing the bio um, conference, I want to narrow more to the vaccines and other biotech products that the region is engaging in, and all come under the regulatory harmonization process as well. So, we realizing that there's a need, during the COVID, vaccines became an issue, and other medical devices became an issue, and we have the head of states giving us the decision that for us to catapult the actions and activities to ensure the manufacturing of vaccines. We called in May 26, identified 5 manufacturers and some potential manufacturers in the region. There were 5 of them, and then we brought them together during the meeting on the side, as a side meeting of the heads of the Health Ministers Assembly, to make collaborative decisions. And we looked at identifying the bottlenecks in vaccines research and development and production, identify and define the types of vaccines to be produced within the region by each manufacturer, because we realize that all the 5 of them may be now producing the single vaccines, and at the end of it becomes choked within the region. The other vaccines that we may need that has not been addressed. So we looked at all those parameters, and then also define the medium, short, medium, and long-term strategies to boost the production in the region, engage with more partners and biotechnology developments, to liaise with the vaccine manufacturers, and strategically how to support each other to build a regional hub for vaccines production. So the decisions of that side meeting was actually presented by the DG of WAHO at that time to the assemblies of health ministers, and to make a business case out of it, and so that with the support of the African CDC, we could all work together, and they were part of this meeting. We developed a roadmap for regional sustainability, and then we also looked at how we can get the buy-in from Gavi, SAHPRA, and the rest, UNICEF and the rest, to have a strong commitment to source at least 30%. So that's where the genesis of this 30% is coming from, which was migrated in June. We had this meeting in May, made the decision to migrate it in June in Addis Ababa for African CDC to take up for at least for 30% of the products that were produced on the continent, which is on the regional blocks. And then, of course, looking at how we can buy those as a donation for the region. So we're producing our products, and they buy in for our own people, so that we can look at how we can fast the process. So to open up this venture, to make the manufacturers see the possibility, or entice them to know what is happening. So in terms of finance, manufacturers will look at the finances aspect. We did a scan of the amount of vaccines that are purchased, whether by the member states themselves or by partners like Gavi, UNICEF, and the rest for the region. And when we mapped it, we realized that for almost about 20 of the common vaccines that were produced related to the diseases that were present, we're looking somewhere at the total cost of $8 billion within the span of the 20 years, within the span of the 10 years. So then they realized that if they are able to organize themselves well, they can tap in. Of course, even if it's 30% of this amount, they can tap in and then use that as a means for which they can get their work done. Next slide, please. Oh. There's something wrong with my system. Can you go further? Is it finished? Yeah, okay, thank you. Mine is not changing here. I don't know what happened. So let me go like this. So at that same time, we looked at the areas, the key criteria of indicators. We looked at quality and then the commercial viability. So even though we are trying to work and promote, I'm sure there was a problem somewhere. I don't know. Okay, thank you. Maybe that will even help me better. I can move around. So that even though we are talking about helping them to assess the market and all the nice things that we're discussing, we make sure that quality cannot be compromised with. And then the commercial viability is also important. So you're looking at quality and quantity. So here, what are the elements that we should be looking at? The political coherence, that are actually policy frameworks that are need to be done, investments that we need to source that for, incentives within the countries and the region that has to be done for them, and then the regional dimensions of the markets in individual countries, which are not often sufficient. And of course, this applies to all medical products as well as vaccines. And then the product portfolios that needs to be identified, which we did, the technological transfer that needs to be established to make a good business linkage, and of course, know-how, and then technology, human resource capacity, and upgrading the real human resources to the scientific level that is needed, and then the regulatory oversight and quality assurance that needs to also be looked at in terms of the regulatory capacity development. So these were the things that we looked at to address the situation. Now, these were the manufacturers, the 5 manufacturers that we identified. There was one that already produced yellow fever, which is the Institut de Pasteur. And then we have 4 that are potentials. For now, they've gone far. So for the Institut de Pasteur, had an end-to-end manufacture of yellow fever, and that has been already been WHO pre-qualified, which is supplying both regional and local, or for exports. But I realized that the capacity was small. They were just doing 6 million for the whole year, which was not enough. And the scale was to go about 30 million if needed. And then we also looked at other areas of products that they could do. They identified and did the selection. They did their own caucus meeting and look at areas that they can work together, areas that each of them can produce. And then the other partners, collaboration and funding that we're getting. So by the 2023, Institut de Pasteur have received about 75 million euro from the European Investment Bank and 10 million from the CP. And there's this project that which called the Madiba project that they want to do, which is the manufacturing of and development of vaccines for the region. And then the Novartis Biotech, which is also in Nigeria, that's also already in formulation with, collaborating with Merck and Technovat, and have successfully designed certain platforms, which is the viral live particles and then the viral cell particle platform, and have developed a lot of work already. And where they are, recently they've gotten about $2.2 million from Afrozen Bank in doing a feasibility studies, and the next will lead to clinical trials of some of the products that they have done already. And then which called Atlantic Life Sciences, which is also known as the Pharma, has now also been able to produce a snake serum and anti-rabies vaccines, and actually is under clinical assessments, which is in phase 1 and is being tested by, because of the nature of the snake and rabies, there's a need to look at the animal side and look at the human side. So there's a comprehensive assessment that is being done by an institution called the Mampong. They do a lot of these traditional things. The past FDA has actually worked on and approved it. So they're going to the next stage. And by November 2024, the first part of the product would have been done for the first clinical aspect. No. And then they can also produce the anti-tetanus and measles and other products. So they all have amounts that they are looking up to. So partners are donating. They have not reached their maximum. They're working. BioVaccines is also in Nigeria working and collaborating with the government to do all the things. And DEC Consultant is also in Ghana. They have also received about 5 million euro from the European Union, and they actually also have developed or built the structures and things. So from the 2022 meeting that we did, they saw the seriousness of coming together, and each of them to be able to have a healthy comparative work done and then to converge well. Each of them are developing their capacities in terms of all the infrastructures they need, the human resource and things, and then with time they come together to look at it. The one that is really leading in terms of end-to-end, which is the antigen development, is Innovative Biotech, and then he's ready to share his platform and other cells to all of the rest for them to move forward. So that is that collaboration that has been effective within the region, and it's also been done well. So this is my last slide. From what I've said, I think that if we want to achieve the African CDC goal of 60% vaccine production by 2024, it means we have to work together. And that we acknowledge the efforts that AUDA NEPAD, the African Vaccine Manufacturing Institution, as well as initiative, as well as the African CDC, the PVMA. No, PVMA have changed their name now. And then also looking at address some of the challenges that has been going on the continent. A lot of work has gone on, looking at regulation, looking at production and all the capacities that have been put investments here and there. Looking at the CMOs that have been worked with in other areas, I think we've gone far than before if, as compared to 3, 4, 5 years ago. But then we still need to accelerate the processes to meet the set goals before the next pandemic. Well, I don't know whether the impulse will be a pandemic or we can control it as early as possible, but then this is something that is stating out, and then we have to be careful. And then we have to look at other various emerging diseases that are likely to come. So we have to work with speed, and then we have to work together because we have very limited resources on the continent. The convergence of the outcome of this conference, I think, should also help us to collaborate with other institutions like the Ghana Research Development and Manufacturing Institutions in Ghana. There's one also in Senegal, and the others around scattered on the continent, I think in Egypt and the rest. So if we can all work together and brainstorm to find the way forward to see what each of us can do better, I think that would be a way forward. And also create that responsiveness, that agile, that responsive and flexible, collaborative, and stronger reliance between the RECs, the national NMRAs, the African, the AMRH, AMA, African CDC, and other manufacturers. I think that would also help us because there we could be looking at the human resource capacity needs. What do we really want? How do you go about it? What are the scientific and skills development in terms of training in all the areas that will help us so that we don't have to be just training anyhow, but we'll be more focused and set the priorities right. And then we also the technological transfers, intellectual properties and equipment. We have been talking about tech transfers, realize that hasn't been easy because now there's competition globally and everybody wants to work. So how does he develop and then transfer his technology, which is quite modern to you, for you to just take and use? There should be a win-win aspect. Again, we have to look inward. And I kept saying that there are a lot of us, which I say as the Black in diaspora, who are helping in this industry's development. And I believe that if we're able to align our work well, most of them will look down back to Africa to help. But some of them are ready, but then they don't see the structures and systems being put in place. But if you're able to do that, I believe that there will be a lot of help internally and externally from our sources to develop our own niche and then develop ourselves. So the equipment and facility upgrades, some are doing it, like I mentioned with the 5 industries in West Africa. And I believe that like South Africa and the rest, Egypt, are also good and they're doing it. So it means we are not starting from the scratch. We're doing well, but we have to augment the process. And then research and development of us innovation training, that should also be all-inclusive, not developing one section or one region and leaving the rest. We should spread it well, and then look at the procurement and cold chain mechanism, because the value chain aspect of it all is that there's not just production. When you produce, where does it go? How do you keep your products? Where do you get the string and needles? Where do you get all the things that are necessary, the packaging? Somebody has to produce it. So you have to look at the value chain across as well. And then respecting the existing regulatory systems and working along with them. And also seeking financial, I don't know whether you can see this slide, seeking finance supports the national regs, the national regs, and then other continental regulatory research, innovation, and manufacturers within the region for medical products, which of course includes vaccines. So there's a little I want to say. I will say thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sybil, for sharing with us the ECOWAS WAHO MRH activities, the achievements, and also how you have, as a region, strengthened the regional review processes to ensure or to facilitate access to health products. We'll now move, we'll take our next presentation. So what we'll do is that we'll take all the presentation and do answer question session later and comments. We'll take a presentation by Dr. Julius OTIM. He's a medical doctor by profession. He's got a law degree and he's also has a master's in public health, master's in business administration, and also postgraduate diploma in project planning and management. He is currently the Senior Health Officer, Medicines and Food Safety, East African Secretariat, that is in Arusha. And he also worked as a manager for epidemiology and disease control. And he also worked for Child Health Advisor, World Bank, Reproductive, Maternal, Neonatal, Child and Adolescent Health Project. Let's give a round of applause to Dr. OTIM. Thank you.
He has woken up. I think this is great. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to give you an overview of the MRH program at the East African Community Secretariat. This is a flagship project of the AU NEPAD, meaning that it was the first project in terms of medicines regulation harmonization, which was started in 2012, but it came into real work in 2015. So that's me. They have already introduced me. You can go to the harmonized regional regulatory frameworks enhances access to quality medical products. And this is more important, especially in low-income countries, where we have weaker systems and there is a risk that medicines which are substandard can easily circulate. You can go to the next one. Yes, so the next slide is just telling us what people have been reiterating in the plenary. And the people were referring to the awakening which was given to us by COVID. So the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the weaknesses in regulatory systems and precipitated our minds to work harder to see that we have effective regulatory systems to enhance access. And of course, regulatory harmonization refers to unified regulatory requirements across participating NRS in terms of legal instruments, technical standards, and guidelines to guide regulatory activities within the NRAs. And when I'm talking about the NRAs, I'm talking to national medicines regulatory authorities within a specific regional economic community. And in this case, we are talking about the East African community. And maybe just to say more about the medicines regulatory harmonization at the EAC. This has been supported by a number of partners. We got support from the World Bank, Bill and Melinda Gates. And the goal was really to see that we have standardization of technical requirements, optimizing medicines regulatory processes in order to enhance access, timely access to safe and efficacious medicines. We also had the intention of strengthening leadership and governance, knowledge management and accountability, and also strengthening the capacity of the NRAs. And this is quite interesting to note because we have one of our NRAs which was established in 2018, but they are hopeful that soon they will be at maturity level 3, and they are doing quite excellent work. Also, one of the key outcomes we are looking forward to is to expand our scope of regulation to include aspects like devices and also to do quality management. It's also interesting to note that in terms of coordination, more or less like what Dr. Sybil presented, our work is anchored with the expert working groups. We have expert working groups for medicines evaluation and registration, good manufacturing practice, quality management, pharmacovigilance, and then legal and regulatory reforms. And also we have a forum of heads of national medicines regulatory authority. This is a policy organ. Whatever we do, including the technical work we do, must be approved by the heads of national medicines regulatory authorities. And then this goes further to the Sectoral Council for Health, where the ministers of health from all the countries sit. And if there's a decision which we feel that should go up to the heads of state, then it will go to the summit where all the heads of state sit. And also, I just want to inform you that when the program initially started, it was by 5 countries. But as I speak now, we have new countries. We have the Republic of Somalia, which joined the EAC just a few months ago, and then we also have the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's also interesting to note that at the level, when you look at the different NRAs, you find that the performance is at different levels, and that's one of the challenges. For example, while we are very proud to note that the United Republic of Tanzania, their regulatory authorities are maturity level 3. For the Republic of Somalia, they don't even have a regulatory authority. They just have pharmacists who are just seated in the Ministry of Health. So those are some of the challenges, but like I'd given the example of the Republic of Rwanda, this medicines regulatory harmonization builds the capacity of the regulatory authorities. And we are looking forward to see that we can be able to uplift also the Republic of Somalia, so that they can have a strong regulatory authority. Go to the next one. Yes, so what are the key activities which we do? So one of the key activities which we do is evaluation of product dossiers. So far, we have had 31 joint assessments. So the process of that evaluation, we have identified one of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, that is TMDA, from the Republic of Tanzania. So they take the lead in this process. So they receive the dossiers, then they allocate them to 2 assessors from 2 different NRAs. For example, they could allocate a dossier to the Republic of Uganda, National Drug Authority of Uganda, and then the Republic of Rwanda. So after those 2 assessors have done the evaluation of the dossier, then we call a meeting where we bring 2 representatives from each of the NRAs. And then we sit in a plenary, they present their finding, and then we do the analysis, and then we decide whether such a product should be marketed within the East African region. So once marketed, then that authorization is effected in all the countries across the region. And so far, we have had 145 medical products which we have approved. Then we also have joint inspection of manufacturing sites. That is also a key activity which we do, and it's led by one of the NRAs, that is National Drug Authority of Uganda. And So a number of facilities have been inspected within East Africa, but also outside East Africa. So activity number 1 and number 2 are one of the key activities which we have done a number of times. Then also we have joint inspections of clinical sites. That one is not very strong. I must thank AVREF because we had a meeting in Somalia, I think 3 weeks ago, where they trained our people to be able to do inspection of clinical sites. Then we have joint post-market quality surveillance and safety reporting. That one has been done once because we feel that such activity should be done at the same time and planned together, because if you do it in one country, the borders are very porous. So it is very difficult for you to be effective. Like we said that you can't be safe until everyone else is safe. So you cannot have quality standard products in one country when the borders are really porous across the region. And then also enforcement of regulatory decisions, so that if there's a red flag in one of the countries, all the other countries should be able to take action. Next. Yeah, so we have, just to highlight some of the advantages, building more expert capacity, improved collaboration amongst experts. So this has been one of the key activities. We have partners who have been supporting us more. One special thanks to WHO, Swissmedic. So when the program was started, a number of trainings have been done in a number of aspects to build our expert capacity. And promoting efficient evaluation of medicines, reducing workload, and supporting early access to medicines. Like the example which was given, that if somebody is going to submit those applications across all the countries, how long would that take? So one application, and then it's evaluated once, and then once you get authorization, you just simply go and meet the country requirements, and then you have the medicine accessing the market across the countries. But within that, I must also highlight that we normally do the metrics, and we look at the time it takes to register medicines within the different countries. You'll find that some of the countries take a very, very short time. For example, in Zanzibar, it takes on average 25 days to register medical products once we have done the process of joint evaluation, once we have given the authorization. But in some of the countries, it can take up to 500 days. So you find that those are some of the challenges we try to address, so that now we want to shorten the time period. So some of the countries take a long time. And of course, to the industry, this process is really efficient, and it's also better for them in terms of resources. So other than you going around all the countries, you can be able to submit one application. And then once the authorization is given, and then you can be able to go and register your medicines. The other thing also we do what we call common mapping. So if we find that the applications in more than two or more countries, we can pick that application and then we make it go through the joint process, so that now the applicant gets that benefit. Go to the next one. So what considerations are key in terms of strengthening these processes? So one of the key things is work sharing and building synergies. I was giving the example of the Republic of Rwanda, which is hopeful of achieving maturity level 3. When it was established, it was trained with the Republic of Uganda, and they started working together. They would have placement of the experts in the National Drug Authority in Uganda, and this built the capacity of the newly established NRA. Then partnerships and collaboration are very key, and sharing experiences. I was giving the example of partners. First of all, we have funding partners, but we also have technical partners like the WHO and the Swissmedic. And now we are quite engaged with the European Medicines Agency. I remember 2 weeks ago, we had a joint assessment, and then they presented a webinar, which was quite good, because usually we will use the opportunity of those joint assessments also to build the capacity. So while we have the specific assessors who have done the dossier assessment, we have the newly recruited staff within the national medicines authorities, the ones we call junior assessors. So we try to encourage them whenever we have the resources, so that they are part of that process, so they can be able to learn. Then one of the key things also, which is very important for this process, is looking at the clients. Of course, the key client there is the industry. So we are always engaged with the industry. Once every month we have meetings. And then in that process also, we developed a client charter, which is, it defines our responsibilities to the industry, especially in terms of timeline. So we know that once an application is submitted, we have a target time we need to achieve, and then we listen to the industry especially addressing their specific concerns. Training, support, and coordination. I already talked about training and coordination at the level of the EAC, the technical working groups, the forum of the heads of NRAs, the Sectoral Council for Health, and the summit. So those are the coordinating activities. But within that, I must also see that we have a number of challenges. I think AUD and NEPA hired a consultant to evaluate the staffing needs at the regional economic communities. You'll find that most of the time you find one staff. Medicines Regulation Harmonization and Food Safety have just one staff like this. The assistant I had, our contract also ended. So it's quite a challenge. So those are some of the challenges in terms of coordination. There's a need to improve the staffing at the regional economic communities. Then effective adoption and implementation of knowledge. That's quite important because we know that, for example, if you are talking about the guidelines, you have WHO guidelines. So sometimes you do not need to reinvent the wheel. So you just need to adapt or adopt. So you can use the same guidelines and then you modify them to fit into the context in which you are working. It saves a lot of resources and time. But also what's very interesting is that you'll find that most of the members of the regional economic blocks belong to more than one economic bloc. So you find that one country is a member of SAHPRA, is a member of the EAC, then you find one country is a member of EAC, is also a member of IGAD. And we're saying that the AU and NEPA should take that up. Because, for example, last week we sat and we revised our guidelines for EAC. But in that same meeting, we have members of the EAC and members of IGAD. That means that now when IGAD wants to revise their guidelines, they will be spending more resources. And then if you're a member of IGAD and a member of EAC, now which guidelines are you going to follow? So I think there is a really critical need for us that is harmonization across RECs so that we can be able to rely. Then I talked about financial support from partners. One of the key challenges for some of these activities, the aspect of sustainability. Someone whispered to me that I think in SAHPRA, the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, they pay money to support joint regulatory activities. Also at the EAS, we have some of the regulatory authorities which are strong, they're able to support their participation. But we also have the regulatory authorities which are extremely weak. You find that even if you call one person to participate in a meeting, you have to provide support. They don't have the resources. Of course, not a mistake of their own, but some of the countries have gone through lots of challenges, war, and so on. So you find those extremely weak authorities which cannot contribute. So at the level of the EAC, we have decided that we need to have, we need to see that the applicants actually submit top-up fees so that we can be able to sustain our activities. Because the funding ended on the 15th of May. But of course, that process of sustainability is going to take time. You can build it over time. You cannot collect all the fees you need today and be able to sustain the activities. And also, what's important is monitoring and evaluating for improvement. This is really very critical. So across the RECs, when we're implementing these joint MRH activities, we need to look back and say, what have we achieved? Have we improved in terms of timelines? Because once we're able to improve and then we do our work and then we're able to meet the commitment as per the client's charter, then we shall be able to attract the industry. Once we attract the industry to the joint regulatory activities, then we shall be able to get more funding to sustain our activities. Go to the last slide, I think. Yes, so just to highlight the importance of these activities. So like I had said earlier, that the joint regulatory activities are the RECs strengthen the NRAs. But all the technical people we use are from, again, the NRAs support the RECs. But we also know that once we have the strong RECs, then we have a strong armor. A strong armor also strengthens the RECs, and the RECs also strengthen the NRAs. So we need to be very critical on that, because we know that once we have that relationship and strength across all levels, then we shall be able to achieve our dream of ensuring that our people have access to safe, efficacious, and quality medical products to ensure that they live a healthy life. And I think the last one is just to say thank you for listening and thank you for your time. Asante sana.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. OTIM, for sharing the EAC MRH experience. I'm not sure if this mic is working. Can you hear me? All right, thank you. Yeah, you see now I had to take it. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Otten, for sharing EAC MRH activities, experience, the benefits of the joint approaches, and including the challenges that you experience as a, coordinator of all the NRAs, and also the key considerations in strengthening regulatory capacity. We'll now move on to take the last presentation. This comes from my colleague, Ms. Silvarani Badayachi. She's a senior manager in pharmaceutical evaluation management program at SAHPRA, and she oversees, 5 subunits of quality and bioequivalence of small molecules, registration of biological, complementary, and veterinary medicines. And she holds a master's in the area of pharmaceutics, and she has over 30 years experience as a pharmacist in various fields of pharmacy, and that includes academia, hospital, manufacturing, clinical trials, pharmacovigilance, retail research, and she also have over 15 years experience in pharmaceutical quality regulation and control at the regulator, previously Medicines Control Council and now SAHPRA. And she has participated in WHO PQ, pre-qualifications of medicines programs, assisted with assessments of medicines dossiers. She has also participated in various health collaboration initiatives relating to health system strengthening, and also participated at IGDRA, that is international conferences of drug regulatory authorities. She also chaired some session there on harmonization as well. And she holds a master's degree in education with specialization in adult education. And she believes that adult learners are experiential learners, and the work environment is a key element and in expanding the knowledge base of any field. All that is needed is to encourage and support people to share these learnings with others. And hence, ongoing training or mentorship is key in ensuring that members of a team are capacitated to ensure current global review standards are maintained. With that all said, let's give Silvarani a round of applause as she comes to the podium. Thank you.
So thank you, Madam Chair, for that kind introduction. Let me just see if I'm able to progress the slides. Thank you. So it makes it also a little bit more easier for me to present while not distancing myself from the audience. Are you able to hear me? Okay. So today I'm going to share the details of the Southern African Development Community Medicines Regulatory Harmonization. So this is just going to entail a bit about the past, the history and the role, and then the present, and of course the future into what the activities of the RAC is and our forward-looking vision, and you'd understand what I mean by that a little later. So Zazibona, as it's affectionately known as, is the SADC MRH Joint Assessment and Inspections Initiative. So this is a collaboration of medicines regulatory agencies. And the term Zazibona has a meaning that they were forward-looking. And indeed, they have been forward-looking. So with that, I will be able to take you through some of the activities, which also talks to how Zazibona has been working towards strengthening the regulatory environment in order to make access to medicines more feasible. So the name Zazibona comes from the first 2 letters of the 4 founding states. So Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia, if put together, gives you Zazibona. So now, as we we stand, that happened in 2013. As we stand, it includes all 16 member states. And of course, the objective of the initiative included reducing the workload and hence reducing timelines to registration, testing the mechanism of cooperation among regulatory authorities. So, I mean, in the early days, it was issues of trust. So having to work together, working with each of the agencies to bring together this system tested our ability for close cooperation as regulatory authorities. And obviously, to develop confidence in the process of regulatory collaboration. So ultimately, this would be facilitating harmonization of the regulatory requirements in the region. So this was also the basis and a platform for training and capacity building of the regulators in the region. So the participating SADC member states are listed there, and they sort of divided into those that are active members in the green, and the ones in yellow are those that are not active, and we have one observer, which is Mauritius. So the key features of this initiative, so it's not a legally constituted initiative, and it does not make decisions on the registration or rejection of products. But what it does, it is a work-sharing initiative. This participation is based on the signing of a memorandum of agreement for the NMRAs involved. It operates in an advisory capacity and provides scientific opinions on the quality, safety, and efficacy of the products. So just the emphasis is that it provides scientific opinion. The participating member states agree on a common recommendation to either accept or reject a product. The membership, according to choice and capacity to participate in regional joint activities. So the 9 active members, they do register products and are able to contribute to the regional assessments and also the inspections. The 6 are non-active, and of course I've mentioned the one observer. So these are based on their capacity to participate, but remember they all are engaged in the process of learning and working together in terms of enabling cooperation, which is a key element in strengthening regulatory systems in the region. So the 2 main pathways that are undertaken in this process involves full assessments of generic product applications. So we have a first review and a second review. And so we have a primary evaluator, and it is then validated or checked by a second evaluator. We have 2 such review cycles, and then a final recommendation is made and discussed in the plenary. We also follow the reliance pathway. So SRA, or stringent regulatory authorities, and we've got in brackets WHO listed authority. So those are the ones where we are able to apply reliance in terms of being able to access the unredacted reports. And then, of course, WHO PQ products, and also use the CRP process, which is also used in most of the regulatory authorities on a national level. So this is also supported by the GMP approval on site inspections, desk review, so there's reliance there, and the remote inspection, special cases, example, pandemics, and this, of course, excludes inspections of CROs and API sites. So active member states are expected to use the recommendations to finalize their products in 90 days. So these recommendations are not mandatory. The recommendations are not mandatory, and of course, if you are going to use them, the process will take place within 90 working days. I'm not going to go through some of these. So currently the process until October 2023, the dossier submitted and fees are paid to the countries where the manufacturers are interested in marketing the product. Then the requirement is that should be at least 2 countries where the submission is made to make them eligible for the SAHPRA assessment process. And in this case, we require the consent of the manufacturer to enable it to go through the SAHPRA pathway. So 1 country is then nominated as a rapporteur. So they will conduct the first review. The second country will be the co-rapporteur and does the second review of the product. And we had the QA done by a WHO representative. So the sovereign decision making is still made by the countries. So in terms of timelines, the process of assessment, the total time of 11 months, which was 330 days, which is calendar days, during which the application will have 2 windows of opportunity to respond. And these are like 60 days period. So if you minus the 2 by 60 days, 120 days. So you remain with 210 days, which corresponds to the time frames of established regulatory authorities. So the target median time to a SAHPRA recommendation or scientific opinion is 9 months, and this is inclusive of the applicant's time to respond to queries. So the NMRAs are then given, subject to that recommendation from SAHPRA, 3 months post the SAHPRA recommendation to finalize the product. So what we have found is that labeling requirements are obviously country specific, and this is often part of the legislation, and it's to be submitted with the country specific module 1 requirements. So this is the part that will be different in the submissions. The challenge that we have is SADC labeling guideline is yet to be implemented, although it's devised, and the language of the labeling to be submitted as per specific country requirements. In terms of GMP inspections, these are initiated after submission and assessment of the product. The assessment report is, of course, a vital tool for inspection. The inspection is conducted by inspectors from at least 2 of the active countries, and an observer from non-active countries are also included, so this enables development of those countries or agencies in terms of inspectorate capacity, and further to that, in the inspection conducted will be valid in all the countries where the product would then be submitted. The eligibility criteria for the desk review is decided by the SAHPRA inspectorate. What we've noticed is that post-approval, we have challenges in that variations are not yet done by SAHPRA. We don't look at import, export, pharmacovigilance, and obviously these are to be handled by the countries in line with individual country requirements. So these still do present a challenge in terms of access. Remember, once a product is on the market, and if there's variations, and these may take some time and is a challenge in terms of accessibility. So we're looking into strengthening that area. So SAHPRA since 2013, 10 years later in October 2023, it was then decided, let's take stock of what we've done, whether we are making the progress that we anticipated and what can be done better. And as SAHPRA means forward-looking, this is what they have done in order to move forward in terms of strengthening their processes. So SAHPRA holds 2 meetings a year for the heads of agencies. Since 2013, it had 17 training sessions, 34 face-to-face meetings and 13 virtual meetings. And the virtual sessions obviously ran during the COVID period. The assessment sessions, they happens 4 times a year. And there were 74 manufacturers inspected for GMP compliance. The schedules are also 4 schedules a year. And then on average, we'll see about 11 products per session. And we had so far 409 products that were reviewed and recommendations provided. Just to advise you that as we sit here, there's a Zazibona session running in Johannesburg for this entire week. So that's Zazibona number 48. So in terms of the regulatory outcomes from the program, from day 0 to May 2024, these are the outcomes in terms of sessions that were done and the number of products that were registered at country level. So you could actually see the benefit it has to that country in terms of access to medicines, and then also in terms of the work savings for regulators in having to do those assessments. You will find that the founding members, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Botswana has got more registrations because they had started a long time before. So I'm just going to move on. We did, of course, experience challenges, and these are the reporting and tracking of applications. What happens is that applications come through 2 countries and they are submitted separately and then determined as to whether they do qualify for the Zazibona criteria. And then, of course, we have challenges with resources, funding, and this is something all regulators struggle with, is staff attrition, where people leave the agency after they've been very well trained. And so you do struggle with having to have the resources to also fit into the Zazibona assessments. Then legislative issues, labeling, and some reliance practices. Different regions have different legislative requirements that does put them in difficult situations to just readily adopt outcomes. And of course, sometimes we have meetings and there's other country commitments which needs to take place. So it is a challenge to have people always available. So at the country level, the challenge is backlogs and long registration times, which you obviously want to reduce. We have things like high staff turnover, limited capacity to assess certain types of products. So some countries are not vaccine producers and some are not experienced. So we have challenges with having to get reviewers in those specific areas. And then of course, inadequate financial resources. Remember that these sessions involve bringing in evaluators from each of the different NRAs to a venue, and of which it runs for a week. So it is cost intensive, and without donor funding, it is a challenge. So we obviously are pressed to look into ways of making it self-sustaining in order to benefit from this process. Okay, so this is basically what we are saying. When the NMRA sneeze, the region catches a cold. So it's not only isolated to one of the countries, the entire region is affected. So when we lose our staff in one agency, it affects the entire regional process. So what we were looking at is the future opportunities for Zazibona is obviously in the line of capacity building through training and twinning, mentorship, the member state contribution and partial cost recovery strategy. So we obviously look into trying to become sustainable or self-sustaining, and then to introduce new work streams because it's working well for medicines. But what about the other areas where we are constrained in terms of resources? So medical devices, and we also have, for instance, veterinary medicines. And to date, we've got veterinary Zazibona on the go. We've got 2 meetings and recommendations already sent out for the screening of those applications. So that one is well underway and is also one of the strengthening of regulators, especially those that don't have resources in veterinary areas because of the different species and the difficulty in obtaining that kind of resources to do assessments. Important is also opportunities in stakeholder communication. We've learned from COVID. We've started doing things online. Our meetings are virtual, and of course we have a lot of information shared on the website, and nothing surpasses the fact that face-to-face meetings is the best place to learn and to interact with member regulators. So, and one of the key areas is adaptability of the system. So I'm not going to go through much of the benefits. Essentially, it's the same. We don't want to duplicate work, especially for the registration of the same product. If it's done by one member or it's done by Zazipona, all members are able to access this information. Capacity building of assessors and inspectors, improved effectiveness of medicine registration process, the efficient use of limited resources, and of course, regulatory intelligence through improved information sharing and networking with other NMRAs in the region. I think that the manufacturers seek to benefit quite a bit in this, because normally you would make an application to the countries that you would want your product to be registered in and then comply with the country requirements, whereas in this case, you submit one application and the recommendation can be then recognized or accepted in other of the member countries. The same would be for GMP inspections. So it brings to the fact that we have closer or faster timelines to registrations. And then of course, if these comply with the technical requirements. And we emphasize that because one of the ways of strengthening regulation is to ensure that we empower our applicants to be able to know how to submit and what to submit so that they submit compliant dossiers. And it also reduces the amount of time taken to market and hence improve access. So after the 10 years, they've thought that if each application is made separately to a regulator that you want to submit your application to, it would take some time. So the first, the one regulator is to screen and accept your application. The other one is to do the same. And there's no way of coordinating or aligning this. So the idea was that a dossier be submitted to a central office. So it's one place, so there's no having to duplicate or send to separate different agencies. So there is an efficiency that could benefit the process. Then, of course, the rapporteur, co-rapporteur is appointed to conduct the first and second review. So we've indicated that in those countries, we may nominate a country NRA as a rapporteur and the other one as a co-rapporteur. And in cases where they don't have the capacity for that assessment, for instance, it's a vaccine, and they may not be having the ability to review a vaccine but received an application for it. So in such instances, we opted to utilize the experienced reviewers. So we nominate a reviewer as a rapporteur and another reviewer as a co-rapporteur. So you would always have access to the reviewers. So that's a second change that is proposed in the joint assessment procedure. Zazipona would meet to discuss the assessment reports. The QA is still done by WHO experts during the meeting. And so we're not literally constrained by the capacity of a particular NRA, because you have reviewers that are selected to be reviewers in this process. And then what happens is once we send out recommendations, it's one list of questions to the applicant. So it's not a list of questions from each of the regulators that they have applied to. So it's just one set and it's one lot of questions that can be dealt with by the manufacturer, which I think they do appreciate. So the joint assessment process will then have central recommendations as well. So the applicants to submit their dossiers and fees paid to all countries. So once that process is complete, they will submit to the countries where they are interested in marketing their products. And this will be within 12 months of receiving the central recommendation of the joint assessment process. So it still maintains sovereign decision-making by the countries and is allowing them their 90 days of receiving the application with central recommendation. So this is just basically an outline as to how SAHPRA has been dealing with this. So you may receive an application from an applicant for a new chemical entity or generic product for full review or even reliance, and then maybe biological or biopharmaceuticals or biosimilars. And then that goes through the joint assessment process, which is responsible for ensuring the quality aspects of the applications compliant, the product dossier site inspections are done, the clinical aspects of the application is reviewed. So in terms of SAHPRA, we would only assess the module 1, the module 3 to R. So module 1 is the regional requirements in terms of our legislation. 3 to R basically is the regional technical requirements. It may be different from other agencies. And then it must include the SAHPRA joint assessment process recommendation. So, you know, it's not going to require review because we've got the JAP recommendation. So the requirements in 3.2S, 3.2P, Module 4 and Module 5 are covered by the joint assessment process. So that is not something that you would look at. So this new centralized process, I've described more or less what was the intention. So it is being piloted. So it's submitted on a portal and it's not submitted on each country level. It's involving 30 products that are earmarked for this pilot. We're looking at cost recovery, so now there's a fee included. So we've outlined there $2,500 per product, and then 1,500 for line extension. And then the commitment is you would have 9 months to the recommendation, which excludes the applicant's response time. And of course, an updated dossier is prerequisite for a positive recommendation. So, and then allowing you 3 months to registration at the country level. So I'm not going to go into details, but just to say that products that are pre-qualified are not included because we all qualification. The WHO SRA approved products are excluded because we all also recognize that process. So we will deal with applications that requires either full review, and we can use reliance such as a CEP, CPQ, and then of course biologicals on a case by case, which require a different fee structure, which we haven't yet finalized at this stage. So to come to areas that we think would further enhance accessibility. So it's inclusion of other products in the scope. So the veterinary SAHPRA I've mentioned already. The intention to include medical devices, the life cycle management, which we believe is a low-hanging fruit, and it's critical to ensure ongoing access to market variations. And then, of course, the PI and PIL guidelines for the region to be implemented. And of course, with the outcomes of the pilot, we are hoping to identify any future efficiencies in the review or the strengthening of our review processes. Thank you. I think that brings me to the end of the SEDAC presentation.
Thank you very much, Silverani. We have heard from all the REC's MRH representatives, and you know, we've had the challenges that they're experiencing and also the hard work that they're doing, including the achievements. With all that said, let me ask if there are any questions from the floor. Questions, comments, additions. Was it that very clear, crystal clear? I'm trying to see if there are any questions. or comments? Okay, maybe what I can do is that I can give each of the panel members, parting words, seeing that I'm not seeing any hands. It means that everything was just straight to the point and well elaborated. So I'll give panelists just a minute just to just say parting words with regards to the topic of the day. Thank you. We'll start with Dr. OTIM. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, the audience once again. So just a few thoughts on some critical areas. One is I think that the MRH programs at the RECs also need to consider supporting the local industry. I remember with Arakwa Muhimbili University, we carried a training because if we just simply regulate and we don't support them, they may not be able to access the market. And yet it's our dream that we need to see that the capacity of the local industry is built so that they can be competitive. Then the other issue which we need to look at is what I'd mentioned earlier, the aspect of rec to rec harmonization in terms of guidelines. That is quite important. I'm seeing the DRC is a member of SADC, but it's also a member of the EAC. The Republic of Tanzania, member of SADC, member of EAC. Kenya is a member of IGAD, member of EAC. Then you have SADC guidelines, EAC guidelines, and SAHPRA guidelines. So that's an area where we shall need to have the AU and NEPA, because now we have the African Medicines Agency. So if we are fragmented, there's no harmonization at the rec level, then you have AMA up. So we need to consider that aspect amongst even the NRS within the region. For example, if we have the Republic of Tanzania, their regional authorities at maturity level 3, and they have done some work, how can that work help a regulatory authority which is weaker, so that they can be able to benefit since they don't have resources to do some of the work? Of course, within that, we don't have to drop our heads. There's no compromise in terms of ensuring that our people access medicines of quality standards and which are fixtures. The other aspect is, since I think we're in general in agreement that the way to go is medicines regulatory harmonization, working together to enhance access, but also cuts the cost of the industry. So I think we need to think through how we can be able to sustain some of this work, because we have been depending on partners, but partners cannot support us forever. So at the different fora, wherever the opportunities, we need to advocate so that we work to sustain this. Of course, now we are thinking of charging the industry, but it would be very great if our national governments would also make a contribution, and then we see that this good work which we are doing is sustainable, because it goes beyond just enhancing access to medicines, but also building the capacity of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority. And like I said earlier, that once we have a very, very strong National Medicines Regulatory Authorities, it means that the REC is strong, and it means that African Medicines Agency is also strong. And I think once we achieve that, then we shall be able to really celebrate that our people can access medicines, easy access, but access to quality medical products. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. OTIM. Thank you, moderator, and everybody. I see the MRH process or initiative managed by the REGs as the middle block, which serves as a strong pillar for continental development in any area, particularly when it comes to regulatory, looking at AMA coming on board. We also serve as, again, a stronghold to ensure that the national NMRs are strengthened and brought together to be able to share knowledge and experiences, and also to build their capacity.
So we have, the regs have a big responsibility, and even though they may not be a regulatory agency in terms of just recommending but not approving medicines per se, our role is to ensure that whatever is being registered at the country level meets the quality and safety criteria that are needed to ensure that the patients receive the best medicines as required. So for me, our responsibility is said that we have to ensure that the region, the continent, and the nationals meet the same level of development when it comes to quality and safety of medicines, because that's the goal of any regulatory agency. Again, we also are responsible to ensure that partners like WHO, EMA, and Sweet Medics are really advocated to support the NMRs at country level and to see the need for that capacity development that are needed. Because from the REX activities that we have done, it has encouraged most partners to galvanize those opportunities like training and mentoring that we are doing now. We're working with WHO to ensure that the countries benefit. Most cases realize that it's not the REC itself or its secretariat members that are benefiting. It's rather the countries, the NMRs that are staff that are benefiting from all the coordinations that we do. So these are the way forward. And the next partners that we're looking at are the local manufacturers, like Dr. Tim has said. We need to look at the manufacturers, the laboratories, and other areas who also matter in ensuring quality and safety of the products. Because when we walk through production with the manufacturer, they come to understand what they have to do, they come to understand their responsibilities and what to owe to the patient, not just business as usual to make up their monies or to make up some sort of engagement for themselves. But then we are matching them on, yet we are ensuring that it's a win-win thing as the benefits in getting their resources in terms of finance or business. We're also ensuring that whatever is coming out from their end meets the requirements. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sybil. Maybe before Sybil speaks, I saw a hand from the audience. I think, yeah, yes.
Thank you very much. I have a question for the panel, but also by if either Gugu and even Chimweme, who has just entered here, could contribute to this question. And I must say in advance, it's a controversial one. So, but it's provocative. We've had excellent presentations from the REX and others. And earlier we had a session on creation of armor. I recall very well in 2005 when we were discussing about harmonization on the continent. We said we shall harmonize on the continent using the REX as building blocks. Now, my underlining is the REX as building blocks, not at the end themselves. The ultimate objective is harmonization on the continent. So my question is, how do we envisage transition from harmonization from the REX to the continental level so that so it truly becomes a building block and it does not become another bureaucratic step? You know, Helen earlier told us about, you know, that sequential coming from now, it would be from AMA, then to the REX, then to the countries. So what is the vision there? And my second one is not a question, actually, an acknowledgement. I had Severine presenting, and I acknowledge that inbuilt acknowledgement of reliance. Don't repeat what you think you can already, saying that these products that have been assessed through these systems are exempted, because we have actually many more products that have not gone through these systems that we can concentrate on and add value. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll just give the floor to Nkambule and to
Dave's really. Anyway, I presume when it comes to harmonization, the idea is that the African Medicines Agency, through its technical working groups, is going to adapt the guidelines that have been developed by the RECs. Remember, the good doctor from Tanzania told us about the different guidelines that are in operation between the RECs. So there will definitely be need to find an answer to that. And the answer is harmonizing these requirements. And you harmonize them through the technical working groups at continental level. So once you have those adopted, then we have harmonized, because then we should all basically be using the same guidelines on the continent, and therefore there should not be a difference amongst us. It's a long road, Davis, but I think we'll eventually get there, because I think everyone is appreciating and accepting that this is a necessary step for us to take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Gugu. We'll now, Madam Jim. There she is in the group.
No, thanks, Deus, for ambushing me. This is, yes, no, I think exactly, firstly, what Madame Gugu is saying regarding the harmonization of the different guidance documents that are existing in the RECs. We have already started that process, and let me assure you, it's a process that is not looking as complicated as it may sound, because what the EMPTC, for example, did was that we looked at what globally is available through WHO and other, guidance documents, and what is existing in the regional economic communities, and developed guidance documents at the EMP level as a TC at the continental level. Fortunately, the RECs have also realized the need for reviewing their own existing guidelines. And I know of ESC that has gone through that process, and they've also made a reference to the continental guidelines. Zazibona has done the same for the EMP, and IGAD has requested that we should also host a meeting of IGAD in the next 2 weeks to do the same. So already you can see that 3 RECs have already gone through the process of adapting what they have to be in alignment with what is at the continental level. So it's really going to be a continental harmonization. However, I wanted to comment on one thing that I think Deus has talked about: the AMA, the RECs, the NRIs. I don't think the RECs will find themselves irrelevant in this process. RECs will remain relevant components of the system. Let's remember that AMA is not going to deal with all the products. AMA is going to deal with complex products where capacities are not existing. I think in the previous session that we had, Madame Gugu indicated that situations where you find one expert or 2 experts in a REC that can deal with a certain product, and the other one is sitting in ECOWAS, the other one is sitting in ESC. AMA then will pool these capacities and do the work at the continental level. The RECs will remain relevant, because once there's that recommendation, AMA cannot deal with 55. It will be a mammoth task to even support implementation of these recommendations. The RECs will remain an important component to support implementation of AMA recommendations. But also there are certain products. I mean, a manufacturer is interested in countries that are only sitting in SADC, and that product has capacity within SADC that can deal with it. Why not SADC take it up? ECOWAS take it up. So I think that's where we are heading to. And indirect reliance, by the way, IGAD and ESC are going into indirect reliance, so that whatever is done at ESC level, they don't have to redo it. They don't have to duplicate. They are also able to rely on each other's RECs. I know it has also been done by ECOWAS and ESC. I think that's the way to go as a continent, but I don't think there'll be duplication. I think there will be streamlining of processes and making sure that there'll be efficiencies in the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both ma'am. We'll now take the parting comments from Silva, and we'll work towards wrapping up. unless if there's another pending question or comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think one of the things that we tend to overlook is that we had begun many years ago with this intention to harmonize, and we have progressed very well. I think over these years, myself as a regulator have seen the benefits of this harmonization processes, work sharing, collaboration, and I've grown as a regulator in terms of my capabilities. And also I see my team being able to assess globally, which means that there is not only the benefits of reduced review, but the capacity building that has taken place. So I think this is something that we do have to celebrate. And I think the achievements of the initiatives, be it on the RAC level, and I obviously have this glorious vision of AMA being the solution to many of the challenges, and look forward to the implementation of the African model law, which brings us all, I think, in alignment and closer to the harmonization initiatives. So for me, I just feel that there has been a lot of progress. Currently, AMA is busy with a pilot in terms of assessments, and it's based on guidelines that have been a contribution of each of the RACs in this process, and they are fairly well represented there. So I think we are on a very good trajectory towards final harmonization. I think we are in a global space at this point in time in terms of harmonization. So there has been tremendous growth, and I'd like to congratulate all of the NMRAs and RACs, and one fine day we're going to say, AMA, we celebrate this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much to my panelists. Can we give them a round of applause? And also to the participants, thank you very much. And yeah, and you can also give a round of applause to the chairperson. Thank you.